I've been on a journey to turn off those racing thoughts and find that elusive good night's sleep. And I figure you're on that same journey. So tonight, I've created a soothing sleep story / sleep documentary for you about the ephemeral sakura, or cherry blossom. And I'm sharing some cherry blossom photos that I've captured along the way in my backyard and my local town. Welcome to Under Moon and Stars. My name is Shelley. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight, you don't have to do anything. Consider this permission to just let go. There's nowhere you need to go, nothing to solve, nothing to follow, no heavy thoughts to hold. Just this moment and the quiet rhythm of your breath. In, a slight pause, and out. Noticing it now slows the breath, deepens it just a little. In, pause, and release. The lower part of your rib cage expands out to the sides as you breathe in and hold and release. The edge of imagination brushes the senses. A moonlit riverbank lined with cherry trees, or maybe a star-dusted cherry orchard, or perhaps the edge where a lush meadow meets a pine forest that's sprinkled with wild cherry trees under a vast night sky. Sink into whichever setting resonates with you. A pleasant breeze stirs the air, spring's fragrance gentle and light. Lying on whatever surface supports you tonight, a sense of peace gathers beneath this canopy of cherry blossoms. Above, the branches stretch outward, softened by blossoms that gather in glowing clusters under the moonlight, pale against the deepening sky. The last light of day has faded. Blues deepen. Edges soften. And the air caresses tenderly. From here, the blossoms form a gentle ceiling, not solid and not fixed, but lightly shifting. A petal moves somewhere above you, drifting downward. A miniature sail cupping the wind. Another follows, and another. There's no need to look for it. only to notice that the movement is there. And beneath it, you're supported. The ground holds any weight easily. There's nothing to adjust. No position you need to find. Just the quiet feeling of being here. If there's any tension in the body, there's no need to force it away. It can begin to soften all on its own. Shoulders begin to settle and sink with the next breath out. The jaw unclenches without effort. The muscles around the eyes, no longer needing to hold focus, relax. And the breath continues in its own rhythm. In and out. Nothing controlled, nothing measured, just the body remembering how to rest. Above you, the blossoms remain, quiet, unhurried. And in a moment, you'll begin to hear a little bit about these trees and their blossoms. But there's nothing you need to prepare for. Nothing you need to remember. As your body begins to rest, your mind can simply listen lightly. The night continues to deepen around you. The sky darkens gently between the branches as the stars reveal themselves, and the canopy above you becomes softer, less defined, as though it no longer is something to focus on, but something to rest beneath. There's a quiet story held in these trees, not one that needs to be followed closely, but one that can be heard in pieces as your attention drifts beneath the blossoms, resting, supported, with nothing required of you. As the body remains at ease and the breath continues on its own. If you were to look up now in your imagination from where you're resting beneath the branches, what you would see might seem almost like a cloud of pale color suspended in the evening air. These, of course, are cherry blossoms, the flowering stage of cherry trees, which for a brief period each year cover themselves almost entirely in soft petals. Not all cherry trees are the same. Some are cultivated specifically for their blossoms, grown for their beauty rather than for fruit. Others, like the trees you may be familiar with, produce both flowers and cherries, their white blossoms eventually giving way to small green fruit, which slowly deepens in shades of red to deep burgundies as the season moves forward. In either case, the blossoms come first, whether they are a soft blush of pink or white. They emerge before the leaves have fully formed, which is why the branches can appear almost completely transformed. From bare lines into something soft, full, and lightly colored. Each blossom itself is simple. A small cluster of petals, white or pale pink, arranged around a delicate center. Up close, they are quiet and unassuming. But when they gather across the entire tree, they create something much larger. A canopy that softens the shape of the branches and diffuses the moonlight passing through them. From below, this canopy can feel almost complete, as though the tree has shifted from something structured and defined into something more open and atmospheric. And yet, what you're seeing is only one brief phase in a much longer cycle. The blossoms are not the beginning of the tree's life, and they're not its end. They're simply a moment, one that arrives, fully forms, and then gradually gives way to what comes next. For now, though, this is the stage you are resting within, the flowering. Long before the blossoms appear, the tree has already begun preparing for them. Through the colder months, when the branches seem still and empty, the tree is not inactive. It has entered a period of dormancy, a kind of quiet conservation, where growth slows and energy is held within. During this time, small buds are already present along the branches. They formed much earlier, often in late summer or early autumn, long before there was any visible sign of what they would become. Through winter, these buds remain tightly closed, protected against the cold. From the outside, they can go almost unnoticed. Small, dark shapes resting against the bark. But inside, something is already arranged. The structure of the future blossom is there, in a simple form, waiting. As the seasons begin to shift, subtle changes in temperature and light start to guide the tree out of dormancy. Warmer days, longer hours of daylight, not dramatic changes, but gradual ones. The trees respond slowly, drawing on stored energy, moving nutrients upward through its trunk and branches. The buds begin to swell. At first, the change is almost imperceptible. Then, over time, the outer layers of the bud loosen, softening slightly until the first edges of the petals begin to press outward. This stage can pass quietly, without much attention unless you're watching closely. There's no single moment when the tree decides to bloom. It's a response to conditions, to timing, to a balance of warmth and light that has been building for weeks. And when that balance is reached, the blossoms begin to open. Often, they emerge in clusters, several flowers from a single point along the branch. At first, only a few will open, then more follow, until over the course of just a few days, the entire tree can appear transformed. What you see as a sudden flowering is actually the result of a long, quiet process, one that has been unfolding out of sight. Even now, as you rest beneath the canopy, it can be easy to forget that what feels soft and immediate above you has taken months to prepare. And perhaps that is part of what makes it feel so effortless. The tree does not rush. It does not force the bloom to happen all at once. It simply responds when the time is right. And once the blossoms begin to open, they are already beginning to let go. The phase you're witnessing is a temporary one. Cherry blossom petals are delicate by design. Each flower is made up of thin, lightweight structures that are easily affected by their surroundings, by air, by temperature, and by even the slightest shift in weather. Unlike leaves, which are built to remain for an entire season, these petals are not meant to endure. Their role is brief. They emerge fully formed, and for a short time, they hold their place along the branches as they are visited by pollinators. But not for long. The duration of a full bloom can vary, but in many cases, it lasts only a matter of days. A period of stable, mild weather may allow the blossoms to remain a little longer. But a single rainfall or passing wind can shorten that window considerably. What appears at first to be a still and complete canopy is in fact constantly changing. Petals begin to loosen gradually from their stems, not all at once and not in a way that draws attention. In a slow and continuous release, unless you have the opportunity to see them release in the wind, and then it can look like snowflakes falling in a snowstorm. If you were to remain beneath the tree, watching closely, you would notice that there's never a moment when nothing is moving. Somewhere above you, a petal is always in the process of falling. This is not a failure of the tree to hold its blossoms. It's just part of the process. The tree does not attempt to preserve the bloom. It does not reinforce the petals or extend their lifespan beyond what they're meant to be. Instead, it allows them to pass in response to the same conditions that brought them forward. Warmth opens them. Time softens them. And the surrounding breeze carries them away. There's a kind of balance in this. The same environment that encourages the blossoms to appear also determines how long they remain. There's no separation between the beginning of the bloom and its end. Only a continuous unfolding. As the petals fall, they gather below the tree, forming a quiet layer across the ground. The canopy above becomes gradually more open, more transparent, allowing the moonlight and sky to return between the branches. Within a short span of time, the fullness of the bloom gives way to something lighter, less defined. And then eventually, it is gone. What remains is not emptiness, but continuation. When leaves begin to emerge, the fruit develops and ripens. The leaves fall, and the tree shifts into dormancy. The cycle beginning again and again. But this moment, the flowering, is intentionally brief. And this briefness is not hidden. It can be seen in the way the petal moves so easily, in the way the canopy never feels fixed, in the way each small movement above you suggests that something is already changing. Lying beneath the blossoms, there's no need to track that change or hold on to it. It happens whether it is observed or not. The tree does not rush through this phase. and it does not try to remain within it. It simply allows the bloom to arrive and then to pass in its own time. Although the blossoms themselves last only this short time, the trees that produce them often exist on a very different scale. A cherry tree may live for decades, continuing its cycle of dormancy, growth, and flowering year after year. The brief bloom that appears each spring is only one phase within a much larger pattern, one that repeats quietly over time. From one season to the next, the changes are subtle. After the blossoms fall, leaves emerge and remain through the warmer months, gathering light and storing energy. As temperatures begin to drop again, the tree gradually slows, returning once more to dormancy. And within that stillness, the earliest stages of the next bloom are already in place. This cycle does not need to be hurried. It unfolds gradually in response to conditions that are often too small to notice from day to day. A slight shift in temperature, a period of rain, changes in the daylight. Over time, these small changes accumulate and the tree responds. If you were to return to the same tree across many years, the pattern would feel familiar. The timing might vary slightly. An earlier bloom one year, a later one the next. But the sequence remains consistent. Buds forming, blossoms opening, petals falling, leaves taking their place, fruit forming and ripening in some variants, and leaves falling again. What changes more noticeably is everything around the tree. The people who pass beneath it, the seasons of their lives, the moments they bring with them, and the moments they leave behind. A tree standing in one place may witness far more than it reveals. Year after year, it flowers in the same way, even as the world around it continues to shift. And so, while the blossoms themselves are brief, the presence of the tree is steady, not unchanging, but continuous. Lying beneath it now, you are part of that continuity, even if only for a short time. The same branches above have opened before. The same cycle has moved through them again and again, long before this moment, and it will continue after. There's no effort in this repetition, no sense of needing to hold on to one phase or extend it beyond its time. Each part of the cycle follows the one before it, in a way that's neither rushed nor delayed. And within that longer rhythm, the briefness of the blossom begins to feel different, not isolated, not fleeting in a way that's lost, but simply one part of something that continues. Over time, cherry blossoms have come to hold a particular place in the human history they witness, especially in Japan, where these trees have been observed, cultivated, and appreciated for many centuries. Records of cherry blossom viewing in Japan go back more than 1,000 years. Early gatherings were often associated with seasonal awareness, a way of marking the arrival of spring after the stillness of winter. At first, this attention was focused more on plum blossoms, which bloom slightly earlier. But over time, cherry blossoms became the central focus, gradually shaping a tradition that continues today. By the Heian period, members of the imperial court would gather beneath blooming trees to spend time outdoors, writing poetry, sharing food, and simply observing the blossoms as they opened. These gatherings were not formal events in the way we might think of ceremonies now. They were quieter, more reflective, centered on noticing the season as it changed. Over generations, this practice extended beyond the court and became part of everyday life. People would come together beneath the trees each spring, not to celebrate a specific occasion, but to spend time in the presence of the blossoms themselves. This tradition is still observed today in parks, along rivers, and in open spaces where cherry trees have been planted in groups. Families, friends, and individuals gather beneath the canopy, often sitting for hours, watching as the blossoms shift gradually overhead. There's no single activity that defines the experience. The act of being there is enough. Alongside these gatherings, a particular way of understanding the blossoms began to take shape. A quiet awareness that what is being observed is not only beautiful, but temporary. That the fullness of the bloom is always accompanied by its passing. In Japanese culture, this awareness is sometimes described as monono aware, a recognition of the gentle sadness and at the same time the completeness of things that do not last. This is not a dramatic feeling. It doesn't require reflection or analysis. It's closer to noticing the passing of time, suggesting that if things lasted forever, their power to move us would be lost. Because they are ephemeral, it makes them precious. The blossoms open, remain for a short time, and then fall. And within that process, there's nothing to correct, nothing to hold in place. Over many generations, this pattern has been observed again and again, not as something unusual, but as something reliable. A cycle that can be returned to each year. And so the trees have come to represent more than their physical form. They mark time. They signal change. They offer a moment in which people can pause, not to hold on to what is passing, but simply to be present while it's here. If you were to sit beneath these trees in different places across different years, the experience would remain familiar. That feeling, the blossoms above, the quiet movement of petals, the sense that this moment has happened before and will happen again. You're not separate from that history. You're simply another being in another season, resting beneath the same kind of canopy as it moves through its brief and repeating bloom. A shared experience across many. Although cherry blossoms are most closely associated with Japan, the trees themselves are now found in many parts of the world, growing in climates that allow for the same seasonal cycle of dormancy and spring bloom. In Japan, they're often planted in large numbers, along riverbanks, through public parks, and across open hillsides, creating wide, continuous canopies that draw people outward each spring. In these places, the landscape itself seems to shift for a short time, as pale blossoms spread across familiar ground, softening the edges of paths, water, and sky. Beyond Japan, cherry trees have been planted in other regions where similar conditions allow them to thrive. One well-known example can be found in Washington, D.C., where rows of cherry trees line the edges of the tidal basin. These trees were originally given as a gift from Japan in the early 20th century, and they continue to bloom there each year, marking the arrival of spring in a way that feels both local and connected to a much older tradition. In other parts of the world, the trees appear more quietly, in smaller parks, along residential streets, in gardens where they may stand alone or in pairs. Here in the Pacific Northwest, they line our rivers and dot our forests with a soft blush. Wherever they're planted, the pattern remains the same. Through winter, the branches rest. As temperatures rise, buds begin to form and open, And for a brief period, the trees take on the same soft, full appearance, a canopy of blossoms that changes from day to day. The timing of the bloom varies depending on location. In warmer regions, it may arrive earlier. In cooler areas, it comes later. But the sequence is consistent. There's no single place where cherry blossoms belong. They're not limited to one landscape or one culture. Instead, they adapt to the environments in which they're planted, responding to local conditions while maintaining the same underlying rhythm. If you were to travel between these places, slowly over time, you might notice how similar the experience feels, even as the surroundings change. Different skies, different breezes moving through the branches, different ground beneath the trees. And yet the blossoms themselves remain familiar. The same light petals, the same brief presence, the same gradual falling. Wherever they appear, they create a similar kind of space, a place where movement slows, where attention softens, where people, knowingly or not, adjust to the quieter pace of what is happening above them, connecting them through generations and miles, through the memory of blossoms like these. Because what defines them is not where they grow, but how they move through their cycle, again and again, wherever they are allowed to take root. Across different places and cultures, people tend to respond to cherry blossoms in a similar way. They slow down, they look up, they remain beneath the trees longer than they might have planned. Part of this response can be understood through simple observation. The blossoms change gradually but continuously. There's always some small movement, a petal drifting, a branch shifting slightly in the air, a subtle change in the density of the canopy overhead. Nothing about it demands attention, but it offers something for the mind to follow. This kind of gentle, ongoing change can have a calming effect. It doesn't require focus. Instead, it allows attention to settle lightly, without effort, moving from one small detail to another. At the same time, the visual qualities of the blossoms contribute to that sense of ease. The colors are soft, the shapes are simple, the movement is slow. There are no sharp edges, no sudden changes, no urgency in the way the tree moves through its cycle. This combination, soft detail, slow change, and lack of urgency, creates an environment that the mind can remain within comfortably. There's enough variation to hold attention, but not enough to overwhelm it. The briefness of the bloom also plays a role, even if it's not consciously considered. There's often an awareness that the blossoms will not remain for long. This doesn't register as sadness. More often, it's simply a quiet recognition that this moment is limited. And because of that, there can be a natural tendency to stay with it, to remain a little longer, to look a little more closely, recognizing that the passing nature of something does not reduce its value, but deepens the experience of it while it's here. The effect is simple. The blossoms don't ask anything of you. They don't require interpretation or effort. They're present, changing slowly, and then they are gone. And in that process, they create a space where it becomes easier to do the same, to be present for this moment without needing to hold on to it too tightly. Lying beneath the blossoms now, noticing the canopy above, they're already part of that response. There's nothing more needed. The movement continues whether followed or not. The petals fall whether they are observed or not. And the mind, given something this quiet and steady to rest alongside, often begins to settle, because there's nothing here that asks it to remain alert. Only something soft, something changing slowly, something that for a short time is simply here. Attention begins to loosen. The details of the blossoms, the trees, the places they grow, settle into the background. Above, the canopy remains soft, light, gradually shifting. Slow movement barely sensed. A petal drifting, a branch adjusting slightly. Small changes continuing without any effort. There's no need to track those changes. They happen all on their own. Your body, already at rest, can remain exactly as it is. There's nothing to adjust, nothing to improve. The surface beneath you is steady. The air around you is calm and soothing. The same slow rhythm that moves through the tree can be felt in your breathing. In and out. Not controlled, not counted, just continuing. The blossoms above you are not separate from that rhythm. They open, they soften, they fall in their own time. And your mind, having followed gently along, can begin softening further. Thoughts may still appear, but they don't need to be followed. They can move the same way the petals move, arriving briefly and then drifting away. Nothing needs to be held in place. The canopy becomes lighter now, moonlight and stars shining through. Not because it's gone, but because you're no longer holding on to its details. Only a sense remains. Soft color, open space, a quiet presence above you, and beneath it, stillness. The tree continues its cycle. The petals continue to fall. The night deepens slowly around you. There's nothing you need to return to. No next step. No next idea. Only this quiet moment, stretching gently without direction. And as your attention fades, the image softens further. The blossoms become less distinct. A gradual, natural settling, as though the mind itself is following the same pattern as the tree. Releasing, softening, letting go. The blossoms remain lightly above you for as long as they are needed. I wish you well, my friend. I wish you peace, and I'm glad you're here.